Do you have Jesus's words in the Quran?
Yeah, we have.
How do you have his words in the Quran? He didn't speak Arabic.
I'm sorry?
How do you have his words in the Quran when he didn't speak Arabic?
Because our God, Allah, he
so I could say the same thing. Our God, Yahweh, inspired the disciples, the gospel writers, in the Greek, and wrote down what Jesus said in the language that was common to the tongue.
Who are the gospel writers?
Who are the writers of the Quran?
Are they messengers of God?
Yes.
Are they mentioned in the Bible?
Yes.
In John 20:21, the word send in Greek is apostello. Here, the word apestalken is the perfect active indicative form of apostello, which means has sent. It is used to indicate that the Father has sent Jesus. However, in the following part, when Jesus says, I also send you, the word used is pembo instead of apostello. The word pembo also means to send, but it is often used in the context of direct commissioning with authority. Even though the word used for I send you in John 20:21 is pembo rather than apostello, this does not diminish the divine nature of the sending. If Muslims acknowledge that only God has the authority to send a messenger, then the use of apostello in John 20:21 is strong evidence that Jesus possesses divine authority.
Well, when our Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, when he came, the religion was completed. It didn't start there, but it was completed. Okay. And if you read like the Quran, you would see names of the prophets, of a lot of prophets, like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, all kinds of prophets are in the Quran mentioned. So then it is logic. It didn't start with Muhammad. It started way back before, and all the prophets, they had the same message to obey one God. One
right.
God.
That's the belief.
And yeah, exactly. So it didn't start with Muhammad.
That's the claim.
Our deen,
that's
just completed
that's the
religion.
claim. That's the claim. So
no,
that's why I'm challenging
that's
that.
The fact. It's not the claim, but that's the fact.
Okay, so very good. So if that's a fact, I'm asking for, hold on. Since that's the fact, I'm asking for the proof of that. For example, Jesus. Show me that Jesus was also a Muslim.
Islam attempts to redefine who Jesus is based on sources that emerged 600 years after his death and resurrection. This is like someone in the year 2025 trying to rewrite the history of World War II without referring to contemporary sources. The Gospels were written by eyewitnesses and those who lived in the same era as Jesus. Islam relies on Muhammad, who never met Jesus and only received revelations subjectively. Why should we trust Muhammad, who lived centuries after Jesus, over his apostles who truly knew and followed him? Jesus was not a Muslim. He is God who took on human nature to save mankind, not merely a prophet bringing a set of laws like in Islam.
Well, Jesus, he preached the same message,
All right, can you show me that?
I'm sorry?
Can you show me that? That he has the same message as Islam?
No, I cannot show you that, but you know what he preached, right? You know what his words were, and he only preaches love and peace and to be good with people who need it.
Yeah, that's the opposite of Islam, bro.
Food, exactly, and
that's the opposite of Islam. He taught the opposite of Islam. He taught the opposite of Islam.
That's not the opposite of Islam. That's you're wrong. You're wrong with that.
Is Jesus the Son of God, bro?
No, he's not the Son of God.
Jesus taught that he was the Son of God.
Where did he say he's the Son of God? If you look at the translation of the Bible, and it is translated, because it's not the original form. How you read it now? You read it in English now.
No, I can show you. I can show you in the Greek because it's written in the Greek.
Yeah, but you don't read it in the original form.
Yeah, the original form is the Greek. The original form is the Greek. Oh, excuse me. The original form is the Greek, and Jesus says, "I am the Son of God" in the Greek.
It is not the Greek. It is the Aramaic.
Can you show me that?
They spoke Aramaic in that time.
How do you know that?
That's the history, man.
Based off what?
You can look it up.
Yeah, what is that history based off of?
The time of Jesus, even the name.
My friend, I hear what you're saying.
Listen to me.
No, I hear what you're saying. Pause.
No, wait a minute. Because
now I had to mute you. When I tell you to hold on, you wait. Okay. So I'm gonna let you speak once you now get to answer the question. Where do you get it from? What is this history? What is your source of history where you get this information from that Jesus spoke Aramaic. Now you can speak. That's all I want. I want that answer.
What is the source? You can find it everywhere, my friend.
Where?
You can. I don't know exactly the source, but
got it. I can tell you. I can tell you.
Yeah, okay, you can tell me.
Do you know where they get it from?
No, well,
they get it from the Bible. These Greek New Testament writings that tell you Jesus spoke Aramaic. That's where they get it from.
Who's getting it from? Who?
Jesus lived in a multilingual environment, Greek, Aramaic, and Hebrew, as evidenced within the Bible itself. One of the strongest proofs is the inscription on the cross of Jesus, which, according to the Bible, was written in 3 languages. Jesus used these 3 languages in his time. There is no manuscript evidence of the New Testament being originally written in Aramaic as its primary text. All the oldest discovered manuscripts are in Greek. If Jesus had only spoken Aramaic, how could the inscription on the cross have been written in 3 languages? How was he able to communicate with the Roman centurion and Pilate? And Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews, John 19:19. This title then read many of the Jews, for the place where Jesus was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written in Hebrew and Greek and Latin. John 19:20. This verse clearly demonstrates the multi-ethnic and multilingual environment during the time of the Lord Jesus Christ. It is explicitly recorded that the inscription on Jesus' cross was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. In Latin, Iesus Nazarenus Rex Judaeorum. In Greek, Isus o Nazoraios o Vasilevston Iudeon. In Hebrew, Habrit Hakadasha, Yeshua Hanatisri Meleke Haivdi. The Gospel of John provides a highly detailed account of the crucifixion, including the inscription written by Pilate himself and placed on the cross. This serves as historical evidence of the trilingual setting of first-century Judea, refuting any claim that Jesus only spoke Aramaic.
All of historians who study Jesus and understand that he spoke Aramaic get it from the New Testament Bible, the Greek New Testament that tells you he spoke Aramaic.
Possibly. It's a part of from the Bible, but if you go back, the original form of what Jesus preached, it wasn't English, it wasn't Greek. He spoke Aramaic and probably a little bit of Hebrew.
Do you have Jesus's words in the Quran?
Yeah, we have.
How do you have his words in the Quran? He didn't speak Arabic.
I'm sorry?
How do you have his words in the Quran when he didn't speak Arabic?
Because our God, Allah, he
so I could say the same thing. Our God, Yahweh, inspired the disciples, the gospel writers, in the Greek and wrote down what Jesus said in the language that was common to the tongue.
Who are the gospel writers?
Who are the writers of the Quran?
Are they messengers of God?
Yes.
Are they mentioned in the Bible?
Yes.
Where?
Here you go. The Gospel of Matthew.
But not
Matthew. Hold on.
Matthew, he wrote the gospel.
Matthew wrote the gospel according to Jesus of
so
Matthew.
He wrote it himself. So he can talk also about himself.
And so here it is. Matthew, the tax collector. Hold on, excuse me. You asked a question.
Yeah.
Matthew is one of the original 12 disciples of Jesus. Who wrote the Quran?
What do you mean? Who wrote the Quran?
The same question that you gave me when I told you, oh yeah, so God inspired the disciples, the apostles, to write down the gospel. And your question was, well, who wrote it? Who are they? And I gave you one of the names. So I'm asking you, same thing. You said that the people who wrote in the Quran record words of Jesus that he never spoke because he never spoke Arabic. But God, you believe that God revealed it and people wrote the Quran. My question is, who wrote it?
Well, Muhammad didn't wrote it because he couldn't write.
Oh man, so that's even worse. So it wasn't written by the prophet himself. So who wrote it?
He memorized it. Listen to me. He memorized
No.
it.
Who wrote it?
And the companions who were with him, they also memorized it, and some of them wrote it down. And
wait, are the companions messengers?
The Quran.
Are the companions messengers?
No, they weren't.
But they're writing the Quran?
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Oh, but you challenged Matthew for writing the gospel, and he's a messenger.
When Muslims claim that Allah inspired Muhammad and his companions to write the Quran in Arabic, they cannot consistently reject the idea that God also inspired the apostles of Jesus to write the Gospel in Greek. If they believe that the Quran can be trusted despite being transmitted through memorization and later written down by people after Muhammad, then they have no valid reason to reject the Gospel, which holds even greater authority as it was written directly by the apostles of Jesus. This issue is further compounded by the fact that no original version of the Quran from Muhammad's time exists. Unlike the manuscripts of the Gospel, which can still be verified, the Quran that exists today is the result of codification, filtering, and selection, with previous versions burned by Uthman. If Muslims reject the Gospel because they believe it has been altered, then they should be even more critical of their own Quran, which went through a far more problematic process of compilation. Muslims cannot consistently reject the Gospel while accepting the Quran without questioning its historical authenticity and the authority of its scribes. If they reject the Gospel because it was written by men, they must first ask why the Quran they hold today was not written by Muhammad himself, but instead by ordinary people who were not prophets. If they believe that divine revelation can be written down by individuals inspired by God, then they cannot deny the authority of the apostles of Jesus, who also recorded divine revelation in the New Testament. Ultimately, the standard that Muslims use to reject the Gospel turns against them, exposing the weaknesses in the authority of their own Quran.
So Matthew, okay, so Matthew, so can you admit then that Matthew has more credit?
No,
Wait, can you admit that Matthew has more credit than the companions of Muhammad who are not messengers?
No, not at all.
Why not?
At all.
Why not? Matthew's a messenger.
Because was Matthew at the time of Jesus living?
Yeah, he's one of the disciples.
One of the. How do you know?
Because it says it right here in the gospel. He's one of the disciples.
Because it's in the gospel.
Right here. And he called to him his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal every disease and affliction. The names of the 12 apostles are these: Simon, called Peter, Andrew, his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, John, his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12, Jesus sent out. So they're messengers. Jesus sent them as messengers.
Jesus sent them as a message, but you believe Jesus is God, right?
Absolutely. It shows it right here. Only God has the ability to send messengers, right?
You believe Jesus is God, but
yeah,
he's also the Son of God.
Yeah, only God has the ability to send messengers, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So this is Jesus showing you he's God because he's sending messengers.
Where does he say he's sending messages?
These 12 Jesus sent out, instructing them.
How do you know? How do you know that?
It's in the gospel. I just read it.
In John 20:21, the word send in Greek is apostello. Here, the word apestalken is the perfect active indicative form of apostello, which means has sent. It is used to indicate that the Father has sent Jesus. However, in the following part, when Jesus says, I also send you, the word used is pembo instead of apostello. The word pembo also means to send, but it is often used in the context of direct commissioning with authority. Even though the word used for I send you in John 20:21 is pembo rather than apostello, this does not diminish the divine nature of the sending. In the context of the Gospel of John, both apostello and pembo are used to describe how Jesus was sent by the Father and how he, in turn, sends his disciples. This word comes from the root apo, meaning from, and stello, meaning to send or to dispatch. Etymologically, this word does not simply mean to send in an ordinary sense, but rather to commission with authority, often in a divine context. In the New Testament, apostello is specifically used to describe God's act of sending Jesus, as well as Jesus' act of sending his apostles. This is evident in John 17:18, where Jesus says, As you sent me into the world, I also have sent them into the world. The use of this word establishes a direct parallel between the Father's sending of Jesus and Jesus' sending of the apostles. In other words, Jesus does not act as a mere prophet delivering a message. Rather, he exercises the same divine authority as God in the Old Testament. The relationship between apostello and apostolos, meaning apostle or messenger, further strengthens the theological significance of Jesus' action. The apostles were not merely disciples who were taught. They were sent with direct authority from Jesus, just as the prophets were sent by God. This demonstrates that Jesus was not just a teacher or prophet, but a divine person with absolute authority to commission his messengers. In the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, apostello, is frequently used to describe God's act of sending his prophets. One example is in Isaiah 6:8, where God says, "Whom shall I send?" By using the same word in John 20:21, Jesus affirms that his commissioning of the apostles is a continuation of God's divine pattern in salvation history. If Muslims acknowledge that only God has the authority to send a messenger, then the use of apostello in John 20:21 is strong evidence that Jesus possesses divine authority. He is not merely a prophet who carries a message from God, he is the very source of that authority. If Jesus were not God, how could he send apostles in the same manner that God sent prophets in the Old Testament? This is compelling evidence that Jesus acted not as an ordinary man, but as the sovereign Lord over the mission of salvation. Jesus possesses the same authority in sending them as the Father has in sending him.